I thought I would share some related experiences, at least I think they're related, dealing with vehicles, cars, and non accidents. First event happened when I was a young man. I was 19 years old and I was hitchhiking across the United States in 1965, hitchhiking from San Francisco to New York City to take an airplane and go to Europe, where I was going to bum around for several months and see France and Italy and all those countries. But on my way there, I was hitchhiking across country. I had not enough money to pay for hotels. I didn't have money to pay for rides or transportation. So I was at the mercy of getting rides. I had reached from San Francisco, I had reached just outside of Indianapolis, Indiana. And I'd been up 3, 4 days, no sleep. I was totally, you know, I've been traveling the whole time, so I never had a real rest. I was exhausted, and it was cold, and I was tired, and it was about a little after midnight, and I stuck my thumb out and praying for a ride because I was beyond numb from the cold. Even though this was in like May May of 1965, you would think that part of the country would be warmer at night. But anyway, so this car pulls over. The guy gets out. He's a salesman, and he's got a suit on and everything, and he's traveling to some city, someplace, and he's tired and he wants to rest. And he asked me if I got a driver's license. I said, yeah. And he says, okay, you can drive and hop in. And so here's the guy trusting my driving skills. I get in the vehicle and we're driving, and I'm just barely staying awake. Every few seconds, I find myself dozing off. He's in the back seat, sacked out, totally asleep, and I'm just driving down this highway. And finally, I must have went to sleep. I kind of I kind of looked at the speedometer, and I was going over 105 or 110 miles an hour in this guy's car, going down the freeway. And by the time I saw that and I looked up, there was a curve in the highway, and I'm going straight off into a forest, some kind of woods. And there's trees everywhere. And I'm going over 100 miles an hour when I hit this. And the car starts spinning and turning around. And it's like in slow motion. But I'm sitting there and I got my hands off the wheel because I can't control it. And the car just keeps turning and turning and turning and then shifting around and sliding sideways. It finally comes to a stop, and there's this cloud of dust and dirt. I mean, it's nighttime, but you can still see this cloud of dirt. And the guy, of course, is woken up in the back seat. And he gets up and he looks around and he sees there's trees all around us. We're in the middle of all these trees, and these trees are only like 1, 2 feet from the bumper and right up next to the door. And there's one behind us. And so he couldn't figure it out. It scared the heck out of him. But he took probably 20 minutes to a half hour with me getting outside the car to guide him to back the car out of this clump of trees. And this was like 100 and some yards into this forest. By the time we pulled out alongside the highway, we were standing there and looking at it, and we're figuring, and he's definitely figuring it. He's looking at it and he says, there's no way in the world you could leave the road, go through all those trees in a straight line or a curved line or any other kind of planned exit and not hit something. It was impossible not to hit something, but somehow when we were moving and shaking and spinning around, we missed the forest and we missed all the trees. So the guy looks at me and he goes, I don't know what you did, kid, but you must have a friend upstairs because that's the luckiest thing I've ever seen in my life. But you're not driving. I'm wide awake now. So we drove. That kind of stuck to me because I thought it was kind of odd that you could have that kind of event at that kind of speed and not even a flat tire or scratch on on the paint job of the car, no dents, no collisions. just clean. Years later, many, many years later, that's when I was 19. When I was about 53 years old, 54 years old, I was working for the Postal Service as a safety manager out of Sacramento. And part of my area to check on safety was Modesto, California, in the Central Valley. And there was a car accident down there involving one of our postal vehicles. And I had to go down there and investigate it and do the paperwork and check things out and see if there's a accident prevention, stuff we could do for the future and what was happening, who was at fault. Typical investigation. So I go there with another man on the staff, a safety specialist named Sam. And we're driving. He's actually behind the wheel driving. And we're going down this main road in the city. And there's a stoplight up ahead, and it's green, so we're good to go. So we're going about 50 miles an hour, 45, 50 miles an hour. But there's a guy in an RV camper, about a 28-foot RV, that's sitting on the other side, like a turn lane. And I'm thinking there must be a green arrow for turn or something, but apparently it was just you go when you feel that you're supposed to go. But this guy didn't see us coming, and he pulled directly out in front of us, made a left-hand turn, and we're coming at him at 45, 50 miles an hour. We're 10, 15 feet away from having a collision with his door, with front part of the vehicle, probably around the passenger door. I mean, it was no way to stop, no way to steer away. By the time Sam sees this guy pulling right in front of us, he's frozen. There's no action. We're waiting for the collision. And just as we should be colliding with this RV directly, whew, the RV is gone. We're on the other side of the intersection. No collision, no accident, no damage, no death, no injuries, no destruction. And the RV is somehow all the way across the intersection, and the guy pulled off into a parking lot at a bank, and he was sitting there shaking. He was all shook up. We made a U-turn, went back through the intersection and drove into the parking lot, pulled up next to the guy and got out and talked to him. And he's saying, I didn't see you guys coming. I thought, he says, and then you guys were right there. I was looking at you. And we were looking right at his face, looking at us. And he says, I figured I'd killed you. And I was ready for the impact. And he says, and just when you should have impact, I find myself on the other side of this intersection. And it shook me up so much I pulled into this parking lot. Now, we're two safety specialists. We're trained in investigating vehicle accidents. We're looking at it. We go back, we look at the intersection, we look at his vehicle. I'm listening to what he said. He saw us, we saw him. The three of us saw all the same exact situation. There was no other story, except when we got to that intersection, the collision, the accident never happened. So what happened? That was as odd as going into the trees. We come up there, and just as we're getting ready to collide with him, totally disappears from our view. And we're just transported. We're transported, and the RV driver, according to his description, he was transported to the other side of the intersection. And we were too. We were just like, boom. So both vehicles went, in opposite directions, and no injury, no accident. Don't know how to explain that. Which gets me to another event. There's several of these, but this other one was a little bit different. This was in 2004, and I was 58 years old, and we had hired a driver. We were driving in northern India. We were heading towards the Golden Temple, which is up before you go into Pakistan. So up in that border area. And it's night. We're driving late. The driver got delayed, and and he caused us to be driving in the dark. We didn't want to be driving in the dark, especially on the quote unquote highways in India. It's not like highways in the United States. You know, you got cyclone fencing up along the highway. You don't have any dogs, animals, camels, uh, cows, people walking, uh, carts. You don't have any of that stuff on the freeways, just cars. But in India, perchance you could have any of those, and there's no street lights lighting up this section of the highway, so it was totally dark. And so my driver was feeling uneasy and everything, so he says, "Well, I got to stop, and we're already running late." He says, "I'm going to stop at this temple," and so he goes in and he prays to his God and all that kind of stuff, and he comes out. We're waiting there, and my buddy Dave is looking at his watch, like, "Hey, we got to get going." So he gets back in the vehicle and he says, "Okay, I've prayed to my God." He says, "Well, we'll be okay." I said, "Okay." We're driving down the road about, let's see, 100 kilometers, 110 kilometers an hour. So what's that? A little over 60 miles per hour. And I'm sitting in the front seat next to the driver. And of course, in India, it's opposite side. So I'm sitting where usually a driver in an American car would be sitting. And I look out ahead and I see this old sadhu of some kind, of guru or something. There was a guy with long hair, a white beard, white hair actually, and he's dressed with a loincloth of some kind, and I think he had something over his shoulder. He might have had a walking stick. I don't remember exactly at this stage, but the kind of image I had in my mind was there he was walking across the middle of this highway. And by the time our headlights reach him, I don't know, what's that, 50, 60 feet, and we're going the speed we're going, it's just a matter of mere second or two, we're going to hit him. We're going to impale him with the front of our car. And he's right dead center in our car. And we're just going, and the driver can't slam on his brakes fast enough, and he can't turn out of the way. And he's sitting there frozen, looking at this guy. I'm looking at this guy right in the face, right in the eye, and he's looking right at me. And just tenths of a second, although it looked like it was all in slow motion. It was like very slow motion. You couldn't tell that it was tenths of a second or hundredths of a second. It felt like it was, 15 seconds. But finally, just as he's in front of the vehicle, he disappears. There's no one there. And we slam on the brakes and everything, and the driver comes to a stop, pulls off side of the road. We get out, we look, and down the road, there he is scurrying across the highway, and he stops and he looks at us and he just kind of waves. And we go, how? How did he avoid getting hit? So that was the thing where he was right in front of the car, and he disappears and we pass through him. Or we pass through him as he disappears. I don't know which, but he should have been on our windshield, or at least our bumper or grill. So that was 3 events that happened to me in a motor vehicle that I have no explanation for. There's many more, but this just kind of gives you an idea. And sometimes things aren't always solid. Sometimes things always don't follow the law of physics. And sometimes just being lucky and in love with God's enough.